Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. This platform is for common sense people looking for up-to-date, accurate, and truthful information without the hot garbage corporate media bias. The power of one can lead to the power of many. You never know what small act that you may say or do that may literally change the lives of millions tomorrow. And don't you ever think that you can't make a difference, because you can. Good morning, my fellow Michiganders. Good morning, my fellow Americans. Holy cow. We obviously have some stuff that we have to go over today. My man Scott at Bigger Truth is going to be coming on the show this morning to talk about not only how we need to secure the vote, but calling out the narrative of what they've already discussed in an article that was dropped, I think he said yesterday. But let's get into what's hot on the oven right now is obviously the radical Democrat that was radicalized by the corporate media and the Democrats with their political, assassination attempt that they constantly put out on President Trump that radicalizes these folks. And there was another attempt on President Trump's life. And we're going to talk about why that is, some footage of the gentleman that was interviewed by Newsweek, I think back in 2022, when he was recruiting people to go over in Ukraine and fight Russia. But again, this just comes down to what? The narrative that the Democrats and the corporate media continue to push out by President Trump. And we said this time and time again, the Democrats, they lie, and then the corporate media run with the lie, and then the social media minions gush over that lie. And so I put out a little tweet this morning. My goodness gracious, if radical Democrats handed in their guns, maybe we see less violence, especially with mass shootings and attacks on President Trump fueled by their extreme agenda and political rhetoric. I mean, it's true. And I want to show a video right now of Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of what she was saying on MSNBC, before the Trump assassination. And this is the type of stuff that they continue to push out. Listen in.
Talk about the fact that when we swore in finally in January, that we swore to defend against those that are coming against us, whether they are domestic or international. And right now, I feel like MAGA in general, they are threats to us domestically. And we see it time and time again. And I think that's why you see so many national leaders, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, coming together to say there is only one person qualified to be the commander in chief, and that is Kamala.
And that's the insanity that they're pushing out. Now, look, that MAGA, to make America great again, folks, are threats domestically. And they push that out 24/7. And what happens is you have these unstable people that buy into this, that get brainwashed by this, and then they start to think like, holy cow, Trump is starting to lead in the polls. I have to do something for my country. I have to do something because he's a threat of democracy. He's going to be a dictator. And then they do this insane stuff. So before I bring on Scott from Bigger Truth, I want to talk about the interview on what this guy said back on Newsweek in 2022. Here it is.
Who you are and why are you here?
I'm 56 from the U.S., from North Carolina originally, so live in Hawaii now, so flew all the way from Hawaii here. So the question as far as why I'm here, to me, a lot of the other conflicts are gray, but this conflict is definitely black and white. This is about good versus evil. This is a storybook, any movie we've ever watched, this is definitely evil against good. I mean, we're battling a situation here where the Ukrainians and the rest of the world are caring and kind and generous and unselfish and take care of one another. And it's just a matter of, we need to stand up for that. That is the most important thing in the world, is just to show human beings that we're kind and we're caring and that we take care of one another and that the world is united so that we feed each other and make sure that, we all move forward as one collective whole unit. So, we feel the pain of one country's failure and their conflicts, and we enjoy the successes of other countries that are doing good, and we all work together. And for some reason, Russia does not grasp this concept that we're all one unit, and we have to get along and work together and be normal human beings. This is 2022. We have to work together. It seems asinine that we have a leader in a country that does not understand the concept of being unselfish and being generous and being kind and just the basic moral value.
So let's bring on Scott from Bigger Truth and get his input. What's going on, my man? Good morning.
Hey, Garrett. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Oh, man, my honor to have you on. It's always good to see your face and hear your voice. What do you think about that video that I just showed with the suspect that wanted to assassinate President Trump yesterday?
Yeah, I hadn't seen that, but it is pretty startling how, this, can't we all just get along? What he's really saying there, he's espousing globalism, saying that, we all need to be kind and generous, meaning we need to put our interests below the interests of the unified global elite, essentially. I mean, I saw a lot of people on the left saying, oh no, he's a Republican. He was pro Putin.
Yeah.
I mean, it could not be more clear that that's not the case.
It's funny that it's because they probably saw the American flag shirt that he was wearing, and anybody that's patriotic is supposedly mega radical right, correct?
Right.
And you can, in his voice, you can hear his passion, and like he was passionate. And so these are the types of people that we're talking about that are getting brainwashed by this constant narrative that the left and the Democrats push out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen it even on our own side.
Yeah, I think it's pretty crazy for most of us on the right to think that that the Ukraine situation is a black and white issue. I think any objective person, I think even an objective Democrat would think, okay, I'm not so sure that Ukraine and Russia is really a black and white. But I think especially on the right, I think we see that our own government is as faulty and flawed as Ukraine's or Russia's. So it's a very ugly, gray, and horrible situation, and there's bad people on both sides of that. And so the desire to go out there, and he was actually apparently recruiting Afghanis, people, Afghanistan fighters from Afghanistan to go to Ukraine to fight on behalf of Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people he was successful in recruiting for that cause, but the thing is that the bigger thing is that if you're going to do something that crazy, the State Department's got to know about it. The State Department is not, even if you're only recruiting a handful of people, if you're flying to Afghanistan to recruit soldiers to fight in Ukraine, I don't think that that's possible to do that kind of crazy stuff without the State Department actually knowing about it and possibly in some level being involved in it.
Yeah, now, I mean, absolutely 100%. And now that we have allowed over 10 million illegal immigrants that we know about, right? It's probably much more. And not all those folks are bad, but even if it's 1% of 10 million, that is a lot of people that could potentially be bad actors that could do damage. So, all these agencies are probably overwhelmed with the amount of people that they're trying to track and trying to make sure that where they're at and what they're doing and who they're talking to. It's literally probably a 24/7 job with these folks. That's what I would assume. But we called this out several months ago on how crazy this election cycle was going to be, and there were going to be hiccups and hurdles and things that are going to happen. I didn't have on my bingo card 2 assassination attempts. I had 1. I didn't think 2 in this short amount of time. And I said this yesterday, that a video that went viral, that, hey, they're not going to stop. Even when President Trump wins in November, if they allow, and we're going to get into voting here in a second, because I want to talk about what you found and what you're going to talk about today. If they don't cheat, and if he gets in, they're going to continue to try to assassinate him. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that I wasn't expecting a second assassination attempt either. And the thing about this, one of the big messages of this is that they are clearly afraid that we're going to overcome their fraud. They are going to cheat. I mean, there's always been election fraud. And I think that they're going to cheat in the same way that they did in 2020. And we'll talk more about how I believe that is. But the good news there is that we can overcome it. And they clearly believe that we can overcome it. They wouldn't have bothered to do this and, had they not had that fear. So
the voter turnout is going to be crazy. There's going to be an extreme amount of people voting in this election, and that's why it's too big to rig, as President Trump consistently says in his interviews, in rallies, and everything else. And it's going to be interesting how that all plays out. And the reason being is because the country is literally on fire. In that video that I talked about that I did yesterday, the Democrats and their policies, they literally threw gasoline on our entire country, and you, the American voter, hold the match, and it's lit. And do you want to vote for the person who's going to burn down our country, or the person who's going to be able to save it and get us back on track? And it's going to take a few decades of work. I mean, we have a lot of work to do. But what's good about the voter turnout is it's going to help up and down the ticket.
Absolutely. My biggest concern is Republican voter disenfranchisement. And especially people who believe, Trump says all the time, we got to be too big to rig. But I believe that here in Michigan, that there are well over 100,000 voters who support Trump, but don't plan to vote because they think it's all just rigged. And what's the point?
You're right. And I've been talking to this because I've been doing a grassroots army tour all throughout the state. And that question comes up is still like, I'm not voting. It doesn't count. And I'm like, look, you can't think that way. The only way to change the election and how we do our elections is to win. And we have to win. You have to vote. And I said this, the people, they don't understand how powerful they are. I mean, in 2016, President Trump won the state of Michigan by 10,704 votes. That's it.
Yep.
And so I told people, if you take 7 people out of, or 20 people out of each county, 83 counties, and you sway 7 people, that gives us what we needed in 2016. And I heard Pete Hoekstra and some others talk about the over 200,000 people who are Republicans in the state of Michigan who did not vote in the last election. 200,000 that were going to vote. These are Trump Republicans that did not vote because they didn't feel that their vote was going to count. And that's what the Democrats want. They want you to stay home. They want you to think that they're cheating because they continue to take ground. And so we have to continue to activate these folks and get them to vote.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this is the result of a very deliberate psyop, deep state psyop, that is I call it the machine fraud psyop. And if you believe that the outcome of the election is determined by some bureaucrat in the World Economic Forum or something at the flip of a switch, that the fraud is in the machines and there is no limit to how many votes they can steal, then you're right. I mean, there's no point in voting because there's no limit to how many votes they can steal. But the reality is that everyone who talks about machine fraud, now there are vulnerabilities of the machines, but that's a big difference between we need controls, we need transparencies, and even transparency and controls that we don't have in our current state laws. Our current state election laws are terrible. They're trash. And we need to get Republicans. We need to get a Republican majority in the state House and Senate. We need to get a Republican governor to sign better election laws. It's absolutely needed. And that's the only way to do it. Going and complaining to the clerk is not going to change anything. We have to change our state election laws, and that's the way to do it according to our Constitution. But the people that talk about machine fraud, they do this very deliberately in order to disenfranchise Republican voters. There is no evidence that votes were switched. There was a ballot in Michigan. There was a ballot for every vote. Now, there may have been ballots that were double counted deliberately in TCF Center, and I believe that there were, but the reality is that there was a ballot for every vote, and it's not at the flip of a switch. And what that means, there's actually good news in that. And that is that there's a finite number of votes that they can steal. And so we can overcome it. And Trump is absolutely right that we can be too big to rig. We just have to get out. Now, one thing that I want to talk about that I think is an important understanding, I think I know, and I've been talking to people, the people that are forefront in the election integrity movement, I honestly do not trust a single one of them. I think that they spread disinformation, false stories, and anyone who talks about machine fraud, I do not trust. I do not trust anyone. And that is the vast 95% of the election integrity people. But there are people who are trustworthy that have been silenced and threatened and intimidated by the election integrity grifters that go out there and talk about election integrity all the time. and they are honest dealers, these people that have been silenced. And so what I've seen in talking to some of them is that the biggest threat is in the voter rolls. And we have in Michigan, we've got more registered voters than there are adults in the state. And Michael Whatley, the chair of the RNC, who is an excellent attorney, and he's very close with Trump, and he was absolutely my hope for Rana's replacement, and I think it was an outstanding choice. He filed a lawsuit against the Secretary of State Benson to clean up our voter rolls, and that's still in play. It's being slow rolled. It's not going to happen in time. It would be a miracle. We have just another really a week or two for this to happen. But it's not going to happen in time. But that is where the fraud is. And the way it works is there are a lot of bad addresses in the voter rolls. And so when a ballot is mailed out and it's returned to sender, it ends up at the Secretary of State's post office box. There is zero transparency. There is zero chain of custody for those legal ballots that are returned to the post office box. And it's what happens with those, I believe, and this is my speculation because we can't prove it. There's zero transparency. We have no idea what happens. I think
if you question it now, you get in trouble, right?
Right.
In the state of Michigan.
Well, yeah, if you question it after the election, you get in trouble. It doesn't like it, you can't even but at least if you're a poll challenger and you're challenging, you're not allowed to challenge. It's insane. But I believe that there's hundreds of thousands, somewhere between 100 and 300,000 ballots that actually end up at that post office box, and they probably end up at the far left NGOs that the Secretary of State works with and gives carte blanche access to the voter rolls. I think that they are, you see them, if you go into the cities, you see operatives with a clipboard or a tablet registering people to vote, which is insane because everybody who is registered, has a driver's license or a state issued ID is automatically registered to vote. We're already over 100%. Who are they registering? Right. From what I understand, they're looking for illegals, and so they're registering illegals. And I was told by one attorney that they actually are registering them to multiple addresses. So they get one illegal, that's multiple voters, because the Secretary of State, on the voter rolls, they don't look at name, they look at address. And so they plug in multiple addresses. They might plug the actual address of that immigrant so that they could vote. And then they plug in another address that they know that they can harvest a ballot. And then they plug in fake addresses that they know bounce back to the Secretary of State. And Secretary, Benson just put out a video I think last week where she was talking about how proud she is that she's doing such a great job at registering, making sure every Michigander is registered to vote. And it's really sick stuff, and it's terrible and it's discouraging. However, there is a limit, and I think that limit is somewhere in the vicinity of 300,000. And the more of us get out and vote, and here's the thing, the more of us get out and vote, the fewer ballots they can steal, because they do not want to get anywhere near 100%. Because if they risk being at or near or above 100%, it's going to be so obvious to everyone, including Democrats, that they cheated, and they don't want that. They don't want Democrats saying, "Wait, this doesn't look right." Yeah, and so they will not steal more than that. And if we really get a huge wave, and where what is it? I've seen everything, polls or studies that show anything from 20 to 40% of Christians, of practicing church-going Christians, that actually get out and vote. And so that means that there's 60 to 80% that don't. And we need to, there's 300,000 people with a hunting license that don't vote.
Yeah, which is insane. And for everyone that's watching, if you want to expose this, everybody's like, what do we do? Who's not standing up? How you stand up is we overwhelm the system. And if they do decide, we catch them. Mm-hmm. And then there's a reckoning, right? Then there's a reckoning, but we have to show up. We have to expose it. And how we do it is we have to vote. We have to vote. That's right. What article did you reference when you and I were talking before the live? Was it New York Times? Yeah. Yesterday was such a crazy news day. So it started first thing in the morning with this article from the New York Times saying that if that it's going to look like, warning us, basically, this is narrative control. This is how they do it, saying it's going to look like it's going to take several days to count all the ballots
on after election day. And on election day, at the end of election day, it's going to look like Trump won, but it's going to, that will be a false, that'll be a false indication. So they're essentially saying this is what it's going to be. We know
kind of like what happened at 4 a.m. We all went to bed going, we won, and we woke up and we lost.
That's right. That's right. And that's what they're saying. And so it's really wild, but we need to, the big thing, we need to work the polls. Republicans are completely outnumbered in the polling centers, and especially the absentee ballot counting centers. In 2020, I've talked to several people who were there in TCF Center. I went there on the 4th, and I got there right after they'd barred the doors and they weren't letting new poll watchers in. But and that was so disturbing to me that they were barring transparency. That's when they were putting the cardboard up on the windows and everything. But the poll workers was really the biggest issue. They were almost entirely Democrats, and they were completely untrained. They did not know what was going on at all. They didn't know the rules or what they should or shouldn't be doing. Their ballots being duplicated by one person without any supervision, which should never ever happen. And that was being done en masse. People were running whole batches through multiple times in ways that were likely double counting ballots. There were just a lot of issues in TCF Center because we didn't have Republicans there working the polls. And this comes back to voting early. And that's another. So there's the machine fraud psyop that the election integrity grifters talk about all the time. The other one is they say you have to vote on election day. And that is a huge problem. If we go into the thing is that, and they say that if you vote early, you're telling the Democrats how many ballots they need to steal. That's complete hogwash. The early ballots are not, they're very careful with the early ballots because that's where their voters are. And they can't count them. They can't start counting them until election day. They can open them and start checking the signatures 3 days before, but they can't start counting them until election day. So they're not going to know in advance. If you vote early, they're not going to know how many ballots they need to steal. There'll be some indication because they know anyone can find out who has voted early, who submitted an early ballot. And by doing that, you can kind of guess, is this person a Republican or a Democrat? But we cannot go into election day with a 2-to-1 deficit like we have in years past.
President Trump is pushing early voting.
Absolutely. And I think it's the most secure way to vote. You can bring it in. Don't trust the mail. That's fine. I don't trust the mail either. You can bring it in person beforehand. But I think everyone should request an early ballot and get on the permanent AV voting list so that you always get an early ballot. It gives you time to think about who you're going to vote for down ballot and pray over your ballot. And I think it's just so important to get that. It's such a benefit to have your ballot in advance, to think about it, to pray about it, to be careful with it, and to know that it really be a lot more thoughtful rather than just going in day and saying, oh, who's this person? I don't know. I kind of recognize that name, so I'll fill that one in. No, this time we have time to actually fill it in and think about it, and you can bring it in advance, and then you can train now, get trained now to work the polls. If you care about election integrity and you're not getting trained to work the polls, that's the one thing that we can do in Michigan that anyone can do, and you get paid for it in most cases, and work in the Detroit County Center, Flint, Pontiac, any of the big cities, the big Democrat cities, whatever the nearest one is to you, work there. And because that's where there's the biggest Democrat majority of the poll workers. It is who counts the votes. Who counts the votes really matters, and we need to be doing it.
And where do they go if they're like, you know what, I want to get involved? I can't sit back anymore. Where do these folks go to get registered and get the training and everything else?
I think the easiest thing is your local clerk. You can ask your local clerk, and they'll set you up. Okay. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, there's so many people that just wanted to, basically vomit their frustration emotions online, but you got to get activated. You got to be a part of the solution. It's easy just to stand behind your keyboard or sit behind your keyboard and just gripe and scream, but to actually get activated and actually go out there and do things. And I'm talking not only with the voting, but actually supporting your candidates by door knocking, making phone calls. There's so much you can do, and it does something to your soul. It truly does. Like when you're volunteering and you're giving back, it's healthy. It truly is. And that's one thing that I will continue to do is try to motivate and inspire people to get activated. And you touched on something earlier in this conversation about getting the right governor. And that's why the day after, I'm going to give everyone 24 hours. I'm calling you all out right now. You get 24 hours to celebrate, okay? And then it's time to get back to work because we got to take back the governor's mansion. And I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that we're supporting the right candidate, that we're getting behind the right candidate, the candidate who can not only win the primary, but also the general.
Yep.
And then that's what we have to do is win it. Because when we win the House back and we get the governor back in that mansion, then holy cow, we can change a lot of great things and get Michigan, because Michigan should be leading the charge. Michigan is unbelievable with the resources and the opportunities that we have, and they're getting squandered, and we have to get the right people involved.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is absolutely crucial. And the Secretary of State and Attorney General, we need,
Correct.
and as Republican voters, we need to have the wisdom to recognize that getting 100% of what we might want in a candidate in the primary, it is very likely to give us someone who is unelectable in terms of appealing to independents. There are more independents than there are Republicans or Democrats in Michigan. And so we need to choose a candidate that is going to have a broad enough appeal, that's going to represent us enough, but also that won't turn away independent voters. And that's really critical.
You're spot on. And we have to understand that if we agree on 80% of the policy and the issues, then we're friends. I mean, I can't say that enough. Especially when you're in a battleground state like Michigan, you have to appeal to that independent voter. And we have to get someone who has business experience, someone who has been in the trenches, has been an executive, who knows about management, who knows how to make good decisions, who's been successful in business. The list goes on and on. And just because you're a great legislator does not mean that you're going to be a great candidate for governor. I firmly believe you have to have some business sense and some business smarts to go in there, because I believe that our states in our country should be run like a business.
Yeah, I think especially 100% with that office, the executive office of the state, it is absolutely crucial. And there's so much there's so many issues that have been created over the last 6 years by the current administration, that it's going to take somebody that is very strong and that's a good leader, that knows how to lead people and how to resolve issues and resolve conflict. And it's a very difficult position. So
Amen to that.
Completely agree. One other thing that I think is really important on similar lines is Mike Rogers. I think, there are a lot especially within the grassroots, who believe that Mike Rogers is a rhino scumbag essentially, and they have so much. It's really wild to me that these people profess Christianity and yet they harbor so much and express so much hatred from their hearts. And it's really, really disturbing to me. The level of hatred. I see more hatred from these Christian nationalists than I do from any other group, even from the left. And
they cut their nose off to spite their face, because what is their other choice? Slocking? Are you really going to vote? So when they say, well, I'm not voting, that's a vote for slocking.
That's right. That's right.
And it's frustrating, because I said this time and time again, after the primary, you get on board. Right. That's it. Don't pick your ball up and go home, because that is a vote. That's what the Democrats love about conservatives, is we get so emotional, we get so egotistical that when our candidate loses, we go home, and we can't.
Yeah, I think if the thing is, like in Arizona, I really do not like Carrie Lake. I really, really dislike her. I think
she's very vocal on that.
I have been very vocal. However, I tell everybody that you should vote for everybody in Arizona. You should vote for Carrie Lake, because a vote for Carrie Lake is a vote for Republican Senate majority. It's actually a vote for someone who is going to approve of and vote to support Trump's judicial appointments. And that is for the U.S. Senate. That is the single biggest issue, is the remaking and the protection of our judiciary. We have that is one of the biggest issues in this country. I think most Republicans would agree, is the two-tier justice system, that we have a system of justice that's applied to Democrats in the preferred class of insiders, and then another for the rest of us. And it is revolting and it is terrible. And the only way to do that is to get better judges in there. And so we need Trump, and we need a Republican Senate majority that will approve his judicial appointments. Because if we have a Democrat Senate, Trump's judges won't be approved, and he'll have to appoint people that are farther left in order to get them approved. So when you vote on election day, do not leave that blank. Vote it. If you have to hold your nose, that's fine. The reality is Trump would not have chosen Mike Rogers if, one, he didn't think he was the most likely of the candidates to win, which his endorsement of Mike Rogers took out Amash and Meyer. And I think Rogers is definitely better. I agree with Trump that Rogers is better than Amash or Meyer, who both voted to impeach Trump, right? and Rogers had a record of saying negative things towards Trump, but he didn't vote to impeach him. And Trump would not have endorsed him without an agreement that at a minimum that he's going to approve of Trump's judicial appointments. So we can trust. I think that's very trustworthy. If Trump trusts him to do that, who am I to say I'm not going to?
Yeah, 100%. And also, like, this is our chance to really see who they are by what they're voting for. That's right. Hold them accountable. And if he goes in there and he just starts to vote with the other side and everything else, then it's our job as Americans to put up another candidate to fight him in the primary and use all of that voting record against him. But, again, you have two choices. It's Slotkin or Rogers, and I'll be voting Rogers 100%.
Right.
And up and down the ticket, Republican, by the way. I mean, everyone. Right. Whether I agreed with 100% of their issues or not, they're going to get my vote, and I'm sure in the hell not going to leave it blank, and I'm not going to stay home. And you can't stay home. If you want to be a part of the solution, if you want to take back this country and fix our election process, then you have to vote. And just like Scott says, just like President Trump is urging everyone, do it early. We have to overwhelm the system to catch them. If they have the balls to cheat when we do that, then they're going to get caught. And then that's the reckoning that everyone kicks and screams that they want. That is the opportunity to do it in a constructive way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so the mature understanding of politics is sometimes the decision is bad versus less bad, and sometimes the decision is I'm going to get 50% of what I want, or I'm going to get 0 or 10%. And so we have to look at this as adults and with a sense of realism, not idealism. Idealism is the land of communism. If you're applying an idealist lens to your political worldview, there's some elements of Marxism within your worldview. Even if you completely and ideologically reject Marxism, this whole idea of grassroots versus establishment is very much it can very easily be distorted into a Marxist dialectic materialism worldview, which is, it's very similar. The way I see it expressed is we're the grassroots and we have, and the establishment is within us. We have to get rid of them. It's the grassroots versus the establishment. That is that black and white thinking, defining something by its opposite. That is dialectical materialism, which is the absolute foundation of Marxism. And you can say that you're a free market person all you want, but if you're putting people who do not belong into a box, you are rejecting reason. And for example, Pete Hoekstra, the people who were trying to there was a large group of people who were trying to remove Pete Hoekstra at the last state convention. That would have absolutely guaranteed that Trump was going to lose. I 100% believe that the people who are leading that charge are Democrat operatives within the Republican Party. That they're deep.
We discussed that last time. 100%. Yep.
And because that is the only group that would have benefited is the Democrats. And Pete Hoekstra has done an amazing job at restoring the party after the absolute mess that Christina Cromwell left it in. And he's raised money, he's brought people together, he has reached out so many olive branches to the grassroots. Come get involved. In his speech, he was booed at the beginning of it by these losers. I mean, these people they wanted to lose. The people that everybody that booed Pete Hoekstra, they want the Republicans to lose. And it's just unbelievable. But by the end of his speech, he said, his speech at the convention, I thought was amazing. He says, he was humble. He says, I know, Some of you don't like me, and that's okay. I'm not here to be liked. I'm not on the ballot. I want to get Trump elected, and you can join me if you want, and I hope you do, or you can not join me, and we're going to win anyways. But I do hope that you do join us. Let's work together, and let's make sure that Trump gets elected. Let's get Republicans elected, and let's win so that we can make this a better state. And that's what this is about. We got to be able to come together and be realistic and win. You know?
I've had several conversations with Pete at different events. He's doing a phenomenal job. He's doing absolutely fantastic. And you're right, he's putting out olive branches. And I think he's just doing a great job. And I agree with you. Scott, hey buddy, thank you so much for coming on today. It's always a pleasure to have you on and get your perspective on things. And I'd like to get you on here again before the election, because who knows what's going to happen.
Oh yeah, there's going to be more. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
And remember, you can follow Scott. He's everywhere, just like me. Bigger Truth on X, on Facebook. Are you on Instagram, Scott?
I am not on Instagram. Perhaps I should.
Come on, Scott. You got to reach the younger generation, baby. Are you on Commie TikTok?
No, I'm not on Commie TikTok either. But all of my content is on either X or biggertruth.substack.com. And I try to mirror as much as possible on Facebook. But if you're not on X, you're going to miss what I do. So
yeah, you got to get on X now. X is a great platform. Didn't used to be. X is phenomenal. Free speech is alive and thriving over there. So make sure that you follow Scott, because he puts out some great material. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate you too. Thanks, Garrett.
Have a great day, man.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, it's always good to have Scott on to give him his perspective on a lot of things, but he's right about the voting. Get it done. Early voting, get it done. And I'm going to end the show on this. I'm still helping the PAC raise money to get these local school board candidates who have put their hat in the ring. So again, if you'd like to help me raise money for them, I'm donating all net proceeds to my book, God's True Law, Parents Guide to Raising Successful Children. You can Venmo me the $20 that we're charging to help fundraise for these folks. You can Venmo at Garrett Soldano, PayPal, Garrett-Soldano, or you can mail me a check. Just message me if you'd like it. But it is a self-help book for you to quit screwing up your kids. I wrote this over a decade ago. I keep forgetting when I wrote this. And I was going to update it back in 2013. I was right, over a decade. I am a more mature father now, and I was going to update it, but then COVID happened, and I got involved in this evil game called politics. So I haven't had time to rewrite it, but there's a lot of great information about helping your mind and programming your mind for success and your children. So if you like this book, I'll give you an autographed copy, $20, donate net proceeds to the PAC that is helping school board candidates take back their school boards, especially in the Rochester community schools, which is one of the bad ones in our country. All right. Have a great day. God bless you. God bless State of Michigan. Of course, and always, God bless these United States. Till next time.